The first sound was the scrape of boots on concrete, slow and deliberate, the kind meant to be heard. The woman didn't turn. She stood alone at the end of the corridor, fluorescent lights humming above her, hands loose at her sides, breathing steady. Every instinct in her body told her this moment mattered. Not because she was afraid, but because they were. They just didn't know it yet. If you love your country and respect your soldiers, hit that subscribe button right now. She went by the name Riley Ward on paper, a civilian contractor badge clipped to her jacket, hair pulled back, posture relaxed enough to look unremarkable. That was the trick. Years earlier, she had learned that the most dangerous person in the room rarely announces themselves. Tonight, the men closing in believed they had found an easy target. They mistook calm for weakness, silence for surrender, and a woman standing alone for an opportunity. The corridor felt narrow, air heavy, the smell of oil, and old paint pressing in. Riley counted their steps without looking, mapped the space in her mind, felt the weight shift in her boots. The past rose up quietly, not as fear, but as muscle memory. They laughed low behind her, confident, careless. A hand brushed the wall near her shoulder as one of them leaned close, voice dripping with arrogance. Another blocked the exit. Two more lingered farther back, shadows with smirks, watching a story they thought they already understood. Riley exhaled once, slow and measured. In her mind, she was no longer in a corridor. She was back on a dark shoreline with waves slapping against rocks, back in the heat of a training yard where pain was a teacher and hesitation a liability. Back where she earned the right to call herself what she was, a SEAL combat master. She turned at last, just enough to meet the nearest man's eyes. He saw something then, a steadiness that didn't fit the script he'd written. He hesitated. It was brief. It was fatal to his plan. The next moments cracked open like thunder, sudden and unstoppable. Riley moved not with rage, but precision. Her elbow rose and fell. Her weight shifted, her foot planted exactly where it needed to be. The corridor erupted in chaos as confidence turned to confusion. Hands reached, mist collided with air. A body hit the wall with a sound like a dropped duffel. Another stumbled, shocked by resistance he hadn't imagined. They tried to corner her, to swarm and overwhelm, but the space worked against them. Riley used angles and timing, turned momentum into leverage, let their numbers become their weakness. She spoke once, her voice calm and clear, cutting through the noise like a blade. "Remember," she said, not as a threat, but as a fact, "I'm a SEAL combat master." The words landed heavy. Too late. Riley's story didn't begin in that corridor. It began years earlier in a place where excuses didn't survive and titles meant nothing without proof. She had arrived at selection with a quiet resolve and a history she kept to herself. The instructors didn't care where she came from, only how she performed. She learned quickly that pain was temporary, but quitting echoed forever. When others broke, she focused. When doubt crept in, she shut it down. Every mile, every cold night, every test sharpened her into something formidable. She didn't just pass. She adapted. She learned to read people as well as terrain, to anticipate before reacting, to stay calm when chaos screamed. By the time she earned her place, she had mastered more than combat. She had mastered restraint, the discipline to walk away, the wisdom to choose battles. That discipline was why she stood in that corridor now instead of striking first. She had been sent here to observe, to report, to ensure a transfer went smoothly. Nothing more. The men who tried to corner her were not enemies in the traditional sense. They were something worse. Complacent, arrogant, convinced that power belonged to whoever took it. Riley had seen that mindset before, watched it crumble under real pressure. As the last of them backed away, shock etched across their faces, Riley didn't chase. She didn't need to. The lesson had been delivered. She straightened her jacket, checked her watch, and walked past them as if nothing had happened. Behind her, the corridor was silent again, the fluorescent hum returning to its lonely rhythm. Somewhere nearby, alarms began to wail. Footsteps echoed from a distance. Consequences were arriving. Riley welcomed them. They detained her, of course. Questions came fast and loud, accusations layered with disbelief. She answered calmly, provided credentials, recounted events with clinical clarity. When a senior officer finally arrived, his expression shifted from irritation to recognition. He dismissed the room with a single gesture and studied Riley with a mixture of respect and regret. He knew exactly who she was. He knew what she had done for the country and what she had been forced to endure in silence. He apologized without excuses. Riley accepted without ceremony. She had learned long ago that apologies mattered only when followed by change. As she stepped back into the night air, the sky wide and open above her, she felt the familiar pull of responsibility, not to prove herself, but to protect the standard she had bled for. Somewhere, those men would remember this night. Somewhere, they would think twice before mistaking quiet strength for vulnerability. Weeks later, the story surfaced in fragments, whispered through bases and training grounds, reshaped by rumor. A woman, a corridor, a lesson delivered without mercy. Riley didn't correct the record. She had moved on to the next assignment, the next quiet corner of the world where discipline mattered more than applause. Yet the impact lingered. Training protocols were reviewed. Leadership took notice. Standards were reinforced. Change, slow and stubborn, began to move. One evening, Riley stood on a ridge overlooking a training field, watching recruits run under the fading sun. Their movements were clumsy, determined, hopeful. She saw herself in them, the uncertainty, the hunger to belong. She knew some would quit, some would break, and a few would rise. She also knew that respect was not granted by rank or volume, but by consistency and courage. That truth had carried her through darkness and delivered her back into the light. A young officer approached, nervous but sincere, and thanked her for setting an example. Riley nodded, offered a quiet word about preparation and humility, then turned back to the horizon. She didn't need recognition. She needed progress. The country she loved deserved soldiers who understood strength without cruelty and power without arrogance. That was the legacy she fought for. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in bruised purples and gold, Riley felt the weight of her journey settle into something like peace. She had faced corners before and would face them again. Each time, she would stand the same way she always had, grounded, aware, unafraid. Not because she sought confrontation, but because she refused to be diminished. The corridor had been just another test. She had passed. From which part of the country are you watching this video?